So as many of you know, DC has been disconnected in film and television for a long time.
The DCU's Chapter 1 is titled Gods and Monsters, and it's the starting point to what is hopefully DC settling in long term, aka wiping the slate clean of all the muck and baggage we've seen in the last decade, and delivering fantastic DC projects for years to come. But just because exciting projects have been announced, it doesn't mean it's automatically a success. Here's a breakdown of how to use the upcoming projects to fix the DCU permanently.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Had to go number 2.
Ah, shadows. Sometimes they keep us safe from those terrible UV rays, and other times they hide potentially great comic book movie franchises from overcoming the behemoth box office machine casting the shadow in the first place. However, it's definitely on the DCU to step out of that shadow and into the light. In 2008, Marvel launched an ambitious start to what would be coined the cinematic universe. Obviously, cinematic universes existed prior to this. There was Alien vs. Predator, and Freddy that one time he fought Jason and somehow didn't win immediately, managing to stretch that plot out barely to 90 minutes. However, Marvel came along and made it very popular to put the letters CU following your brand. After the success of Iron Man, an honestly less than popular character from comic lore, the universe was ready to kick off. In fact, the MCU was so sure in their plan that they even popularized another long-standing movie trope, the post-credit scene. Comic nerds everywhere would swoon when Samuel L. Jackson appeared as Nick Fury to tell Tony and by proxy the audience that they had entered a bigger universe. The MCU had solid movies to form the foundation of what became the MCU. Some were great like Iron Man and Captain America the First Avenger, but some are less revered today but still good like Iron Man 2 or The Incredible Hulk. But most importantly, they all contributed to building the larger world that is the MCU, while introducing characters in full-length films that we actually cared about. It was the perfect storm that was just ripe for the taking. So, why didn't the DCU take it? It's arguable that DC had more popular characters and stronger IP to work with when building their universe. However, they faced a dilemma. They worried that simply introducing their characters one at a time, eventually leading to a team-up movie, would lead to the internet just calling them copycats. Instead of a Superman movie, then a Batman movie, then a Wonder Woman movie, they decided to do Captain America Civil War as their second movie. They threw in their version of what Guardians of the Galaxy was to Marvel in Suicide Squad. By the time Justice League came around, we hadn't even met the Flash or Aquaman yet. Then there was so much packed into a 2-hour Justice League movie that we couldn't possibly develop feelings whatsoever to mainstay characters who had to share such little screen time with 5 other heroes and a lackluster villain. So what's the lesson? Don't be afraid of the internet. The new DCU cannot be afraid to take a page from Marvel's early book because it worked. There are other things they can do to differentiate themselves, which we will get to.
You lunatics better know what you're doing.
But a strong foundation is absolutely essential here. So now that they've borrowed the foundation, what can DC do to differentiate itself? Well, something James Gunn seems to already have a handle on, and it's something that should have been happening the whole time. They need to embrace the idea of Elseworlds. This is something Marvel has not done.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And that's okay. It might not be time to see a Squirrel Girl movie because she doesn't fit into the overall plan right now. However, since Marvel's IP was spread across multiple companies, we did get the Marvel multiverse, just unintentionally. We got X-Men and Spider-Man movies in the same years as MCU projects that were unrelated because they were made by Fox and Sony, and those movies did well. It wouldn't be until later that they would be retconned to be part of the Marvel multiverse. However, DC can and has been doing Elseworlds under one roof the whole time. It just doesn't feel like they've embraced it yet. They can have Ben Affleck's Batman in Justice League and still do a solo trilogy in another world starring Robert Pattinson. They can have The Dark Knight exist in one universe and a solo Joker movie exist in another. They've been especially good at the idea of Elseworlds stories in animated form, with multiple one-off movies telling great comic stories that don't need to connect to anything else. Comics offer such a wide array of characters, the majority of whom could easily become fan favorites and carry their own film. However, unlike Marvel in the early years of the MCU, DC can still do those projects in Elseworlds fashion without interrupting the narrative of their cinematic universe. Then later on, if a multiversal crossover story allows, it's just an added bonus to have some great Elseworlds content. Affleck and Pattinson's Batman may be larger than life, but trust me when I say there's room enough in the multiverse for both. Clearly labeling one as part of another multiverse is key, however, to avoid audience confusion. The cinematic universe needs to have a similar through line, a tone, a look that lets you know, hey, Batman punching this criminal is happening in the same universe where Jon Stewart joined the Green Lantern Corps. Meanwhile, Elseworlds can be the opportunity to get really artistically creative, free from the shackles that a cinematic universe comes with. I don't think we would be seeing a solo Ultron sequel that's also a musical in the MCU, but in DC Elseworlds, let Joker tap his toes and sing all he wants. wants. We're here for it. We're also here for you. Yes, you! But make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you're notified every time we come out with more comic book movie content. On to the rest of the video. Even with a successful Elseworlds brand, that doesn't guarantee success for your main cinematic universe. And what's the secret ingredient? You guessed it, continuity. Other projects outside the universe are fine, but projects within the universe need to fit together in one cohesive world. Superman can't nearly destroy a city in a fight with Zod and then have Aquaman be completely unaware of it. There needs to be a focal point, and that clear focal point are its two greatest characters, Batman and Superman. However, just because they unite the universe doesn't mean they need to be the center of it. They need to be important, but they're not the end-all be-all of everything that happens. In short, what I'm trying to say is that each hero needs to stand on their own. Characters like Green Lantern, the Flash, or even Supergirl need to be able to have a solo adventure in their own corner of the universe, without forgetting the ramifications that characters like Superman and Batman have on the world. Trying to build an entire universe where these two were the main characters just didn't work. That's why Batman v Superman failed. It made us believe that it was Superman and Batman's world that everyone else was just living in. It's for these reasons Aquaman, Barry Allen, or Cyborg felt like unimportant side characters. Sure, Aquaman went on to find success afterward, but not as much as I think he would have if he had been introduced prior to a team-up. If the DCU can find a way to have solo stories that still connect to the greater DCU, then they have the roadmap to success. But they'll definitely need much more than just a roadmap. The penultimate suggestion I would offer to Mr. Gunn is one I'm sure he would be happy to hear. Get weird, man! DC has the awesome characters like Batman and Superman, who are quite weird in their own right when you really think about it, but it gets so much weirder than that. James Gunn and the DCU have already greenlit loads of weird projects. Booster Gold, Swamp Thing, and The Authority are all weird, non-mainstream projects that will be coming to light, and that's great. The final product just has to be a good story. It's definitely a risk, announcing projects outside of what the majority of streetgoers would recognize. Trust me when I say my aunt is not going to have a clue who The Authority are, but it's a risk that could pay off. If the DCU takes care of its universe, then fans will be happy to see any project that takes place within it. You can get as weird as you want as long as the story is good and the characters are likable, even if the thing that's likable about them is how dislikable they are. The DCU should continue to pump out projects with characters we've never seen before and treat them with the respect they deserve. In doing so, you could create all new fan favorites who help tell a larger story and make the universe that much bigger. The final lesson is one that comes from Mr. Miyagi himself. Patience. The DCU needs to learn patience. Not every film is going to be a smash hit. A film can help you build the world on a smaller budget and not make $1 billion so long as the characters and story are well written. They need movies that don't seem like much when you think about it, but turn out to be extremely important to the universe. Take the first Thor, for example. It's not the greatest MCU film. Heck, it's not even the greatest Phase 1 MCU film, but it's decent. It did okay at the box office and successfully established Thor as a character. His brother Loki, who would go on to be an essential villain and character in the MCU, and expanded the world beyond Earth, introducing us to the realm of Asgard within the MCU while still connecting Thor to the rest of the universe. The first Thor wasn't the game changer that the Avengers was at the time, or Captain America Civil War or Black Panther would come to be, but it helped get people excited for what was to come in the future. DC has tried their hardest to make every single project a game-changing billion-dollar movie. Take Black Adam, for example, a movie that came into existence during the popularity of anti-heroes thanks to one Merc with a mouth, and then was delayed for what seemed like an infinite amount of time. A solo Black Adam story didn't need to be this high-budget thing. It didn't need to introduce the Justice Society as a pseudo-antagonist to the film, and it certainly didn't need to go so hard as having the devil be the ultimate threat. It spent so much money on marketing but just didn't see the returns it needed. The only thing that really unanimously excited everyone was Henry Cavill as Superman showing up at the end. It was the small semblance of hope that perhaps the universe was going to find its footing, only for a few weeks later to learn that Cavill was leaving altogether. Black Adam can be a smaller movie that introduced the land of Kahndaq, a wider look at magic in the DCU, and tell a smaller story, with a well-developed character who could eventually have larger implications. And instead, everything in the kitchen sink was thrown at us. And it's not just Black Adam, a lot of superhero movies do this, especially in the DCU. But the most important lesson they can learn is, it's not a race. Small victories build their universe and give them characters people like. They don't need to be Marvel, but they can borrow what works. They need an overall story so that promises from Lex Luthor and a league of their own don't go unfulfilled. And most importantly, they need to have fun. That's not to say the tone has to be the light and often jokey one of Marvel films, but the people creating these stories need to be able to express the enjoyment they are having in making them. Listen, I want them to succeed. My fingers, toes, and everything else are certainly crossed. What would you do if you were suddenly handed the keys to the DCU? What would you greenlight? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thanks for watching CBR.